Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film, Atlanta's LGBTQ Film Festival, and I am so honored today to have a very special guest with us. Bill Condon, the director of Dreamgirls. Aid Atlanta and Out on Film are sponsoring an open-air outdoor screening of Dreamgirls next Saturday, May 8th at the Spring Cinema and Tap House. I'm going to read a quick, Bill, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, and I'm so honored to be here. And I've actually been to the Gay Atlanta Festival. What's it called?
Out on Film.
Hot on Film, right, exactly. A few years ago, but I'm so bummed I can't be there to see it this year.
Oh, great.
But I'm shooting up in New York.
Well, let me read a quick bio.
Yeah.
Bill Condon won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for 1998's Gods and Monsters, and was nominated again for a screenplay for Chicago. His other work includes directing and writing 2004's Kinsey, directing and writing Dreamgirls, which was nominated for 8 Academy Awards and won 2, directing both the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2, directing the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast, writing The Greatest Showman, and directing and producing 2019's The Good Liar with Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen. I am so honored to have you here. Thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you. No, any opportunity to talk about Dreamgirls, I love.
Oh, great. Well, first of all, let me ask you, how have you been getting through the last year?
Well, it's interesting. I've been in New York, and I have to say it's mostly been kind of great. You know, I love the city, and to have those months when it was completely empty, when you could walk down the middle of the street, 42nd Street.
Yeah.
And if you want to take like 5 minutes to look up the Chrysler Building, there's no cars, there's nobody on the sidewalk to jostle you. It really was, it gave you a whole different relationship to the city, which I loved, you know. And obviously also we all miss the things we love most about it, the theater and restaurants and museums and all that stuff. And it's great that all that's coming back. But I have to admit, I'll miss a few of those other things.
Exactly. I'm with you. I'm just ecstatic that things seem to be returning to normal again.
Yes. God.
Well, let's talk about Dreamgirls, because again,
Sure.
we are having a screening of Dreamgirls May 8th, a 15-year anniversary screening of Dreamgirls.
Right.
Has it really been 15 years since Dreamgirls?
No, it's been like 17. No, it's since we shot it. Yeah. No, but it's true. It's just gone so fast, right?
Exactly.
But it's fun, you know. I think part of why it has a life is that you look at those people, and you know, Jennifer and Beyonce and Jamie Foxx and Eddie Murphy, and they're still like as big as they were then. You know, it's like the good fortune we had to have that collection of actors in that movie. You know, I think is you know, led to its long life.
Exactly. What is your relationship to the stage musical? When is the first time you saw Dreamgirls?
I saw it on opening night. I was in the back row.
Oh my God.
With a group of friends, and I had gotten tickets like, you know, 3 months in advance. And I remember going to a friend's house after, and she's making dinner, and God, we were all just talking about that incredible first act finale. But I loved it. I loved it from the minute I saw it many times, different productions, different casts, you know. And then, you know, I got involved with this only because a friend of mine, Larry Mark, great producer, right after Chicago opened, he said, well, what's another one you'd like to do? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I love stage musicals, but I don't think there are that many that should be movies or need to be movies. But Dreamgirls was just right on the tip of my tongue. It just felt like something that could really, really have a different and you know, kind of equal impact if it was made on film.
Correct me if I'm wrong. From what I remember, David Geffen had the rights to it. How did you all convince David to let you proceed?
Right. So Larry's friends with David, and so we went over, and David at that moment, he had the rights to the show, and he was running the studio that would make the show. So it was all him, you know. He had it on both sides, you know. You know, just one of those like interesting times when you go over to somebody's house and you describe what you want to do, and you know, they say, sure, go for it, you know. And I have to say, you know, I remember delivering a first draft of that script. God, it was almost New Year's Eve or something like that. And he called like 2 hours later and said, yeah, I was really moved by it. And we were in offices prepping like a month after that. You know, it never works that way, but it's because of that rare, moment when he was running everything, we were the benefit of it.
Oh, great. You mentioned a few moments ago that not every stage musical needs to be turned into a film. When you first sat down and began adapting this, what was your vision and how you wanted to adapt it and turn it into a film?
I guess it was, I think it was the fact that, movies are a more realistic medium. And I wanted to honor the incredible kind of energy and of Michael Bennett's production. But because it was set in the real world, I thought it was an opportunity to let all of the events that were happening sort of behind the scenes in the show take center stage a bit, so that, and God knows, I think we're living through a time now, the first time that's really comparable to that era where there was that much social change, and especially centered around issues of race. So that to be able to put the Detroit riots in, to show, what happened to Detroit, all of those things, I thought I thought there's an opportunity to give it that extra, kind of bit of reality, and I thought maybe emotion because of it.
I want to ask you specifically about Jennifer Hudson in a few moments, but can you talk about piecing it together in terms of bringing the cast together?
Sure. I remember, the second meeting with Geffen, it was, that was the first piece of casting. It was like, what about Eddie Murphy as James Thunder Early? And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. And called him, and I had lunch with Eddie. I remember he said, yeah, I'm interested, but I might want to play Curtis too, so it was that moment, and then I think he kind of realized that maybe James Thunder Early is a better part, but that was great. He was the first one to jump on board, and again, when you get somebody like that, and you've got that first person, committing, it helps with other people. Jamie Foxx, I think, partly wanted to do it to work with Eddie Murphy, because he idolized him so, and then, Beyonce too, she had a long-standing love and interest in Dreamgirls, so she was into it in any case, but I think it helped that it was that level of star that she'd be working with.
So I remember there was a long search for Effie. Can you talk a little bit about this search and finally coming up with Jennifer Hudson?
Yeah, well, I think the thing was, thank God we no longer live in that era when you can cast somebody and then dub them. So it has to be somebody who can kill that song. So that's already, cuts out a lot of people, but also somebody, that part is one of the great mountains to climb, and it is such a rich, complicated character. So somebody who could do all that. So we saw everybody not caring whether anybody had ever heard of them, and there were a few people who were in the last round who were truly unknown, but Jennifer, it was interesting with Jennifer because it was all there, but it was very raw. You forget just how new she was to everything when she did American Idol, and that had been recent. So it was really about making sure there was no question it was there to be had, and but it was making sure that she could get on that huge, fast learning curve, and she'd never danced on stage before, So imagine, and I'll never forget Beyonce, under her breath, calling out the steps for her while we were shooting, just being protective of her, But just imagine that. You've never been on a set, you don't know how cameras work or anything like that. You've never danced. When I think now, 23 when she launches in, the courage that it took, to actually say, yeah, I can do this. It really still fills me with awe.
There was a time when musicals Hollywood might not have been receptive to staging musicals.
Yeah.
How do you think that the success of Chicago helped pave the way for Dreamgirls?
I think it was Moulin Rouge and Chicago. It was that double whammy, right? But again, it was interesting because that did open the door. And then just as we were starting to shoot and we were in that, delicate budgeting process, you'd never have as much as you want, there were like a series of movies that Rent and Phantom of the Opera and the producers, and suddenly it's like, oy, people, it's such a delicate thing. And suddenly people were saying, those movies were a fluke, musicals, don't work. And then we sort of, it was fighting for every last dollar because there was a little bit of anxiety there. And I think that continues to happen. I have to say recently though, there's something about the way everything is shaken out, and obviously streamers and the experience of watching something at home has become so dominant during coronavirus. But there are only a few genres that seem to really justify the theatrical experience. Obviously those huge Marvel movies and things like that, and animated films. But musicals are really a form where I think people want to get together, and there are a tremendous number of them that are have been made or about to be made. It's really, in terms of volume, this next couple of years is a real return to the 60s almost, I mean, you look at the Oscars, and to me, the only two commercials anybody was talking about, were In the Heights and West Side Story,
Exactly.
both big musical movies that decided to sit it out for a year rather than, premiere on, online. I mean, on streamers.
Sure. As I'm sure you know, whenever a Broadway show transfers to film, you have your peers who are like, no, I want this, or I don't want this.
Oh God, yes.
And I'm sure, but there were some new songs in Dreamgirls. I mean, I loved all this, but when you had those new songs, how did people react when they found out you were adding songs to,
well, I have to say, I got my first taste of this with Chicago and people love Chicago, but there was always like, oh, I love Catherine, I didn't like Renee, or something like that. People take these movies very personally, and they take them very seriously, and I do too. And I have the same, a whole bunch of opinions about all of them. So I understand it, but I think in turn, there are purists who are dedicated to every show, and there are Dreamgirls purists who I think resent. I have to say, there's 100, in the long cut, in the new DVD, the 138-minute cut, I think there's 1 hour and 55 minutes of music. I cut 18 minutes of it's so little of the Broadway score. And then, as you say, there were those 4 or 5 new songs. And yeah, there are people who are always gonna resent that. I have to say, for me, now that we're talking 15 years later, it's, as a fan, as well as everything else, there are regrets of certain things that I wish it wasn't. There are things. There are a few battles I lost. Mm-hmm. That not big things, but little things that I so wish I hadn't lost. And I think now I wouldn't lose, because I think that the world has changed. But for example, Dreamgirls has stage numbers, a lot of them. It has a lot of traditional book numbers, people singing each other. It also has a lot of recit. I mean, it's an opera, it's a pop opera. So those, the first thing you hear are those 2 girls walking out on, Jimmy Early and wailing, which became dialogue in the movie, And I feel like that it's a fine line, because you can't do it all, because I think Andrew Lloyd Webber movies have proven that, you need, a 2 hours plus of that just becomes so oppressive on film. But I do think, and I originally had in an earlier pops of people singing and a little recit to get you used to the idea. The way that the cut wound up, it wasn't until Step Into the Bad Side and a little bit and Family where people sang in a non-stage context, which I think was, I hate to say it, probably necessary in 2006 for a show like this that isn't a broad comedy like Hairspray or a kind of fantasy like Moulin Rouge. But I think now we've had a generation of people who've grown used to the form and would accept it more easily.
I will never forget. I'm also a film critic in addition to my film.
Oh, really?
So I went to an early screening of Dreamgirls here in Atlanta, and there was press here, there was theater people here, there were a bunch of different kinds of people here,
Yeah.
and everybody was just so psyched. And I mean, every number of people were going up crazy for. And then Beyonce started to listen, and nobody was familiar with it. And
Yeah.
I mean, that audience just howled when she was done. I mean, and
Oh, good.
my husband can tell you this. There probably hasn't been a week that hasn't passed that I haven't done my version of Listen somewhere.
Oh, I
So
love that. I have to say, I remember going to you do theater hopping in the first weekend, and there was a little girl she was like 12 years old, but you could tell she just jumped in. She'd seen it already and was
mhm.
just in the aisle waiting to watch it again. And that was exciting, the way people connected to that song.
Yeah, I know that you did some scenes at the Cannes Film Festival, but when was the first time you actually saw this with an audience?
Yeah, it was terrible. We went to Oakland for the first test screening,
Oh,
and
really?
it was like we had great test screenings in the process, but at the beginning, this theater in Oakland, the theory was don't tell them what they're going to go see. So it was a real kind of boy audience, and that's where I had an earlier breakout into the song, and they were like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then sometimes people chase a bad reaction just to see what the weakness might be, like marketing people. So they finally found like the whitest audience in Orange County to watch it, and that wasn't a great response either. But between that, I saw a lot of great audiences, but it was frightening. Imagine, you worked on this for so long. It's the first time you're putting it in front of people, and people are really uncomfortable. It was a strange thing, and
Yeah,
not such a different movie from the one.
exactly. It's been 40 years since the stage musical. It's been 15 years since the movie.
Mhm.
Why is Dreamgirls so iconic? And why do, especially, I mean, people love Dreamgirls, especially in the LGBT community. Why do we adore
Yeah,
Dreamgirls so much?
it's funny because it's a question that came up when I first did the show, and one that is absolutely, an urgent question now, which is how does a white guy get to direct this material? That is really, who gets to tell the story and everything like that. And what I said, and it may sound glib, but I believe it, is that, when you're making a film of Dreamgirls, you're both making a movie about that period and those characters, but also this thing already exists as its own cultural kind of institution. And
Mhm.
to me, I got to do it because I was a gay man, because I think Dreamgirls is this kind of unbelievable sort of meeting place of gay and black culture, and there's as much of, look at Tom Ian and the stuff he wrote. There's as much of a drag queen sensibility in it as there is a Motown sensibility, and I think that's it's a unique animal. That's what it is. But I think the obvious reasons why I think we all, gay people, uh, you know, connect to it is just that sense of being outside the mainstream culture, and that negotiation that you have to make in your life. How much accommodation do you make in order to be heard and to fit in? That's a great kind of theme, and it really explores it well in a way that's universal.
Okay. Okay. I have to ask you about some of your other films as well.
Oh,
I
sure.
was watching the Academy Awards on Sunday night,
Yeah.
and what was it like for you when you were standing in the audience and you won that night?
Oh, a genuine surprise, and I think it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Just because we had won nothing up to then, and certainly not for the script. And as Ian McKellen always said, oh, let me see, right after he said, can I hold your consolation prize? He always called it the consolation prize for the fact that they gave Roberta Benigni an Oscar, which has some truth to it. But it was mind blowing, and I think I was way in the center in the back. I think there are a lot of people who were surprised. So you make your way up there. And I remember looking out, and it was 3.5 hours into that show. It was right toward the end. And all you see is a sea of bored and angry people. So it's not, and if you're as kind of I had a gin and tonic in me, but it's still, public speaking horrifies me, but I found this sweet spot of Ian and Brendan and lovely Lynn Redgrave, and I just spoke to them and I got through it. Yeah.
Great. You've worked with Ian so many times. What's it like working with Ian?
Oh man, it spoils you, it really does. It's first of all, he's so smart, so it's just all the work that precedes the day when you actually shoot is about a constant kind of continuing interesting conversation about every moment in the movie, and really making you think and probe and change sometimes, so I love that about it. And then I have to say, on every movie, maybe not Beauty and the Beast, because he only shot for 2 days on that, but on the other movies, there's like more than one day where you're watching a scene happen and suddenly the crew's not a crew anymore. They forget their jobs, and everyone is just kind of thunderstruck, by what he's up to, and the surprise of it,
Exactly. Another one of my favorites that you were behind is Kinsey. Tell us a little bit about what were your thoughts. What do you remember about Kinsey?
Oh, again, that was a movie I love making. It was we made it in New York. Doug Abel cast it, and I'm so proud when I look back. It just has a whole group of people like John Krasinski and like people whose first or second, Benjamin Walker, whose first or second movie it was. It was a great. Every day there was another great actor showing up who was, Kathleen Chalfant, and then she has to leave to go do a play. That I think more than anything was the real pleasure of that.
Yeah. On behalf, I adored Kinsey, but on behalf of, I think, every gay man in the universe, thank you so very much for the scene between Liam Neeson and Peter Sarsgaard.
I know.
I don't think I will ever forget that scene.
I know. Peter is so game, but then it was funny later because Laura wasn't expecting it, and there's a scene later where he's in bed with her, and we're about to shoot, and suddenly he's naked on top of her. It's like, what, So you have Peter to thank for that too. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you did Beauty and the Beast, there was a little bit of controversy because of the small gay, the character who was gay. Can you talk
oh my God,
about
yes.
that?
Yeah, it was so shocking to think there'd be any controversy. It still astonishes me. And I the thing that I thought I got, it was a casual comment I made. I don't know what I even meant when I said, what did I say? Something gay moment. I forget the word I used, but it was nothing. In other words, none of us thought we were. It was for me, it seemed so natural as the nice little punchline to that he finally danced with the guy at the end, but the idea, and so I think that made me a little uncomfortable was that I didn't want to pretend as a gay director that I was actually breaking there was no great groundbreaking thing there. It was just, I thought we'd broken that ground and we were just having a nice smile with it, so I always felt uncomfortable. I hope everyone understands that I was not pretending to do anything that bold there. It was fun, The controversy really surprised me.
Exactly. I was doing my Bill Condon research this morning, and I'd forgotten that you had directed Sister Sister. One of my favorite
everyone's directed that. I've forgotten that. Yeah.
One of my favorite actresses, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh, she's so great, isn't she? Yeah. Yeah, what a treat. That was my first movie, and again, you're so grateful to actors, because you can't get a movie made until, as a director, and unless actors agree to do it, and I remember both Eric and Jennifer and the great Judith Ivey, both, just being so thrilled to have people, and it was a, I would call it a substandard standard script. It was a kind of potboiler that I remember one review that said, if you ever imagine like a Twilight Zone is written by Tennessee Williams, it has things I love in it, but it didn't cohere,
Yeah.
But man, they gave their all to it. It was great,
Yeah. I read this quote on Wikipedia earlier. that said in college you saw Sweet Charity, which
Oh,
led to a lifelong love affair with movies that are reviled and rejected in their time.
it's really true. Yeah, it is. And it's so interesting because now you live long enough to see, my God, like Sweet Charity,
Yeah.
Rich Man's Fruit. Did you just see that TikTok thing the other day? Like everyone at home doing their own version of that number. The idea that 50 years later has this life is a great vindication for your own instincts. But I'm trying to think of movies recently because that have been kind of unfairly, I don't know about dumped on, but there are movies that are just not. The culture just decides it's not interested in them, and even when there's great work happening, it's part of it, but The Orphans I do love, I gotta say.
Yeah, I remember when John Carpenter's The Thing came out, and it
Mm,
scalded. And then
yeah,
not
yeah,
recently, not long ago, it was considered one of the top 10 films of the decade,
I know,
of its
crazy.
decade. Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. Yes.
yeah.
Well, you have that responsibility as a critic, right?
I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, I wanted to ask you, as a gay man yourself, I mean, is it easier being out than it was? Or I mean, what are your own recollections of being out in the industry?
Yeah, I was lucky. Again, I got there in the 80s, and that was it was the first real burst of that, and it was cool. It was cool in its own way. There was no sense that it wasn't, and I think if there's anything, I don't know what it's like now, but with all these, everyone marrying and having big families and things like that, there might not be quite that thing that I was lucky enough to experience, which was, oh, Tony Richardson liked something you write, and suddenly you get to go to lunch every Sunday at his house, and there's Christopher Isherwood, and there's Gore Vidal, and suddenly, very quickly, everyone gay working in the movies you meet, because that was the generation that had grown up, none of those people in secret, but they all banded together, in love or hate, and I don't know that happens now in the same way, because obviously we're not in the ghetto anymore, right? In some way.
Yeah. I know that you have some projects coming up, but I have to ask you about Come From Away, which
Yeah.
is I don't know, probably one of my top 2 or 3 musicals that I
Oh,
adore.
that's
Can you
great.
tell? I just adore that. Can you talk
Mm,
a bit about the film version?
sure. And if I don't know if you can see it here, but no. So there's Midtown. I'm 2 blocks away from the theater. I'm quarantining right now on my second day, and tomorrow we start shooting the live action capture of the show, and it's really an elaborate uh, enterprise. It's actually 5 or 6 days of shooting. So it's and Christopher Ashley directing again. He won a Tony for directing it on stage. Tobias Schliessler, who shot Dreamgirls and Beauty and the Beast, is shooting it. So it's I think it's going to be a very exciting hybrid of the theatrical and experience, but sort of translated
Sure.
into movies. And it's cool. It's the first theater that's going to happen in New York in over a year. We have first responders; all of them have been vaccinated. Who are going to be sitting in the theater. So I think it also, there's going to be this. I'm so curious to see how it feels, but in theory, it just feels so nice to make a connection between 9/11 and what we've just been through, and have that come full circle in the experience. So I think it'll be a unique version of it, and yeah, Apple's just bought it, and we're going to be on. The creators always describe it as a September 12th musical.
Mhm.
What happened the day after,
Exactly.
and so we're going to be on September 12th.
Wow. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for that. I'm so. Bill, thank you again for
Oh,
talking
thank
to us.
you. No.
Dreamgirls screens May 8th at the Spring Cinema and Tap House, a collaboration between Allen Film and Ada Atlanta. Bill, thank you for your work over the years. Thank you for Dreamgirls. Thank you for being such a trailblazer. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thank you. Me too, Jim. I really appreciate it.
We'll record this in 1 second. Thanks so much.